Executive Member for Economy and Strategic Planning Decision Session, Tuesday the 22nd of December. So let's go through the agenda as printed. First, declarations of interest. I don't have anything that isn't already included on the Council's Register of Interests. Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of November. I'm happy to approve those. We'll sign them whenever we can do such things. So now we're on to public participation. Item 3, and Councillor Claire Douglas is registered to speak. So Councillor Douglas, if you would like to give your comments.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all council officers working in economy and strategic planning roles for their expertise, unrelenting work and commitment over the past 12 months, and wish them a restful break before we all come back to face the challenges early 2021 will no doubt bring us. Before we break for Christmas, I have 2 items I'd like to raise today. The first are the discussions and decisions the executive member has been involved in and will be over the next couple of months around Make It York and its future. I was disappointed to see the decisions made concerning the financial package to save Make It York from insolvency at executive last week involved very little discussion of what the council will need to consider and do to review the functioning of the organisation if it is to adequately serve the needs of the council and our city. The service level agreement between the council and Make It York is currently under negotiation and will come into effect in March 2021. I implore the executive member and his colleagues to take a good look at Make It York and its structure. This includes the governance by the council, oversight on delivery of the contract, and consideration of whether some elements of the existing contract will be better delivered by the council in-house. If these serious issues are going to be assessed, considered and modified, now is the time to do it. This opportunity can't be wasted. I fear if it is, we will see yet more taxpayers' money ploughed into the organisation over the coming period and our city left with very little to show for it other than loan servicing payments. My second item for consideration is agenda item 5, the employment and skills update. On a related topic, I was very glad to see that Council resoundingly passed the Labour motion committing CYC to support employment and training for the young people of our city. This is a great opportunity for cross-party work through scrutiny to review how our city and CYC can best benefit from CYC's apprenticeship levy. I thank the executive member for his support, but I want to remind my colleague that while the motion recognises the excellent work the Skills Team and Apprenticeship Hub have been doing with employers external to the council, helping them to run outstanding apprenticeships, providing training and employment opportunities for the young people in our city, it also highlights that CYC now needs to put a firm emphasis on how it best uses its own apprenticeship levy within its own workforce. This can't be ignored, and until this issue is addressed, CYC won't be fulfilling its role as one of York's exemplar employers, leading the way in tackling the challenging employment environment our young people face. I'd like to wish the executive member a happy Christmas and a good break, and thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Douglas, and I'd like to wish you a happy Christmas as well. Right. Thank you for those comments, and I think if I take those in turn, because I have been invited to listen in to a scrutiny meeting on the 11th of January dealing with Make It York, and having myself been the chair of scrutiny when the first Make It York contract was awarded, and sadly my comments at those days were not taken into consideration. I'm delighted to take up that invitation. So I'm sure there will be a lot of discussion over the period between now and March when the new contract comes into play. And the issue of the apprentice levy, that was clearly a key part of the papers taken at the last decision session. So that is very much work in hand, but I hear your comments, Councillor Douglas. Right, so if we come on to item 4, the quarterly economic update.
Thank you, Councillor Waller. And
Simon Brereton, would you like to?
I have a presentation which
you have a presentation on this report, right? Okay. Going to go through this, and just to explain this, this is very much similar to the presentation that you made to the Outbreak Board meeting, which was so well received that it's been given a number of times since in order to contextualize the economic position in the city.
Thank you. So here we go. Do you have that on your screen now?
Yes, we do.
Like that? Okay, so I just wanted to begin by saying, I mean, there's quite a long quarterly economic update report. A lot has happened over the last few months, but of course, what's happened just over the last few days is also very pertinent to that. I would say, so that what the report says and what I'd like to summarise today is essentially we can look back over the last 9 months and say, actually, we've come through the early challenges of the COVID pandemic well. Those challenges have predominantly been around the difficulty of trading in the city centre. We've seen unemployment rising, but less than any other city, although, as I've said previously, that's cold comfort to anyone who's lost their jobs, and we're working hard to make sure that we help people find alternative employment. The current lockdown is clearly very difficult, and you know, we're pleased that the approach we've taken with the ARG discretionary grants to make sure that that's available for a protracted time. I'm not pleased it's going to be needed, but I'm pleased that actually we took that into account when we were setting the scheme up. And really just to say that what's been at the heart of what we've been able to do so far, and I think what we can probably do over the next few months as well, is working in partnership. So I'd like to take the opportunity to thank our partners in the Chamber of Commerce, in the Federation of Small Businesses, the Business Improvement District, the Institute of Directors, our universities and colleges, and of course my colleagues at Make It York for all the work that's been done over the summer. The first chart I'd like to show you comes from the Office for Budget Responsibilities report that they put out as part of the Chancellor's autumn statement. The Chancellor was very clear in that statement that really we're just at the start of the economic impacts, although it's been a very difficult 9 months. And this chart attempts to show what recovery might look like. Really the key thing on it is to recognise the time frames here. We are at the end of that black line at the moment on the left, and you can see recovery heading to the right there. The upside scenario suggests that maybe by a year's time we might have recovered. The downside scenario suggests that it might take until 2025 to recover, so that's kind of 4 or 5 years, and the middle forecast suggests probably another couple of years. So we need to remember that recovery is not something that's going to happen rapidly, and by recovery we mean businesses returning to the level of turnover that they had, and employment returning to the point that it was as well. So we have a couple of years ahead of us of working through the impacts of the pandemic. However, as I said, much of the impacts we've seen so far have been seen in the city centre, and this chart summarises from our springboard cameras what footfall has done, and it tells a story that I think anyone who's been in York City Centre at all over the last 9 months would recognise. In the initial lockdown in April, there was virtually nobody in the city centre. We were down to kind of 1 in 6 of the normal footfall. By the end of August, that had returned up to nearly 80%, and we were pleased to see that spend had recovered at that point. But then we declined again down to the November lockdown, which actually saw us at about 40% of footfall rather than that 13% or whatever it was in April. So, and the consequences of that, I think, are what we are now seeing at the moment, unfortunately. And we know that however difficult those lockdowns have been, we think that we've probably got more ahead of us as well. In terms of spend, this chart shows you the second quarter of the year, so the first quarter of lockdown, and shows how basically we'd lost something like £100 million from the tills of York City Centre. But look, online spend had increased by a factor of 5. We know it was difficult for those businesses. As we went through recovery in the summer, there was a big increase in the amount of money spent in the city centre, which is very helpful for those businesses in getting them through that initial phase. Particularly restaurants there, you can see this is just figures from Visa. If you look at the whole of the economy, it's something like £100 million was spent in restaurants in the summer in York, and that has certainly helped that sector to weather what's been a very difficult storm, although there is a lot ahead for that sector too. But you can also see the supermarkets have done well, clothing has done well, and other sectors too. Final point in terms of that, and these, I must say, these figures come from some work we've done with the Business Improvement District. In fact, it was discussed at the last time we had one of your decision sessions where we were actually there in person, Councillor Waller. You'll recall we talked about new systems to try and measure the use of the city centre. These are now live, and this is where that data comes from. So I thank Andrew Lowson from the BID for his analysis of these figures. This chart shows where people come from. So across, it's showing how that the majority of spend in the city centre in the second quarter of the year was definitely from locals. As we went into the summer, the number of people coming from more than 50 kilometres away, 30 miles, to spend in York, that was actually where the bulk of our spend came from. And again, in the current circumstances, that shows just how challenging local lockdowns really are. And if we have a period of protracted restrictions on movement, it takes a lot of trade from the city centre, which is there's always a difficult balance between the safety of the city centre and the livelihood of our shopkeepers and restaurateurs. But this is why those sectors are particularly keen for us to be promoting York to a broader area, although we're clearly going to have to think carefully about how we navigate our way through the months ahead. In terms of employment, this chart shows just what's happened. Now, this chart just shows about the whole of my working life, Councillor Waller. So towards the end, you can see from the late 80s, we had a very high climate count in York, about 8,000. That's fallen consistently with a couple of blips, the most recent being the credit crunch of 2008, which itself took about 5 years to recover from. The claimant count has gone up to about 5,000 in York since April. It's stayed stable at that and has actually dropped by a few hundred each month. As I said, if the Centre for Cities compare these claimant counts across all of the 68 cities that they follow across the UK, and York is the place that's seen the smallest increase. I'll say it again. That is, I know that is cold comfort for anyone who's one of those people who has lost their job. We can be confident, though, that our economy has shown resilience in terms of people finding new employment and going into self-employment. We know we've got a flexible student workforce, which helps the city to adapt. But we also know, so this goes back to the first, the OBR forecasts, we know that it's not just retail and hospitality that are in difficulty. The chart on the right there shows the number of businesses in all sectors who've seen turnover decreasing, and it shows that basically half of all businesses across the whole economy, these are national figures rather than specifically York figures, but will apply to York just as well. Now, all businesses in all sectors have seen incomes go down, and what that means is stored up challenge in terms of cash flow, and that is likely to read through into employment figures in the future. There are still around 7,000 people in York furloughed, and about 6,000 on the self-employment income support scheme. So we're watching those figures very carefully. But I'll just finish with this chart from the Centre for Cities, which shows all of the cities that they follow in the UK. And you can see on the right, York is the place with the smallest increase in unemployment of all of those places. So we can be confident that our economy is resilient. Of course, we need to work very hard to make sure that we can help anyone that needs work in York to find work again. And I know we'll be talking about the skills work in a second. We'll be bringing back to you your next decision session and update on in terms of where we are on our economic strategy, which or both of those things will be very much focused on how do we help businesses in York to recover, and can we get back as quickly as we can to a position where anyone in York that wants to work can find a good job. So that's really all I wanted to say in terms of your the quarterly economic update, and obviously very happy to answer any questions that we have. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Simon. I'd like to thank you for that report, and to your team for all the work that they have done in the last 9 months. And as you say, we did have an in-person meeting in March, setting out our objectives for the year, not realizing then really where we would be at the end of the year. But there's a lot of work that has gone into helping businesses to keep going as much as possible. And I'd like to pay tribute to the many thousands in the city in business who have taken a multitude of different actions to do their best to keep going, to ensure that the city centre is COVID safe, that the many different businesses around the city, because we can't forget them, that they have implemented systems to ensure that they are as safe as possible. And as you've detailed in your report, there's clearly a balance over the summer about keeping businesses going and keeping footfall into the city centre whilst not compromising the safety of individuals, whether as workers in the city centre or as visitors. It does feel very much like we are now into a different phase, certainly with the new variant of COVID, for which information is coming out on a daily basis, and one hopes that the national effort to roll out the vaccination programme can beat the wave of this new variant, in order that we can see an end to the restrictions. But clearly that is not the case as we speak today, and we rely a lot on how people behave over the Christmas period. There are some lessons to be learned from Canada, which had its Thanksgiving in October, and then the United States. So I think there are some issues that we need to face, but I think there's a lot of work that's been going on to help the economy of the city. There are some highlights in this report, and as a ward councillor in Westfield, it gives me heart that outside of the city centre is the ward which has the highest number of business startups, and so I think that is a positive sign. There are strong performance across all wards, and I think that's an indication, as you have raised recently, Simon, that there is evidence of the self-employed figure, which had been estimated at around 12,000, may now be significantly higher. Do you want to just comment on that and the work that's going on with partners to help new businesses set up as people find themselves in the circumstance, or it's something that they positively wanted to do all along?
Absolutely, I think you're right. Absolutely right there, Councillor Waller, to identify that not everyone starts a business up for the same reasons. Some people start them because they have to, and some people start them because they want to, and it's often a mixture of the two. The figures on how many people are self-employed in York is based on the annual population survey. Every 3 months, the Office for National Statistics does a survey in York is around about 1,000 people, and they use that survey to estimate what people are doing in terms of economic activity. The last figures produced on self-employment suggested that there were something like 16,000 people self-employed in York. The previous figures have been around 12,000. You have to, because it's survey based, there are errors built into that, but certainly a sense that self-employment is increasing, and the startup rates that's published in the data pack with your report is based on a different source of information from something called Bank Search, which monitors the opening of new business bank accounts. And that's showing that the startup rate continues across the city, and because it's from bank accounts, there are postcodes attached so we can see which wards people are in. And you're absolutely right. The highest increase in Westfield ward. We see there are various other analyses that one can do in that, in terms of thinking what background people are from in terms of starting businesses up. But the traditional picture that we have of it being around kind of rich middle-aged men starting up businesses is a very long way away from the reality. And some of the work that we've done through the summer in terms of providing those micro grants to businesses, which were particularly aimed at the self-employed, have given us fantastic insight into actually the huge diversity of things that people are doing in terms of running their own businesses. A lot of businesses that are the business support world likes to watch out for what they call high growth startups. So they would like to find the next Virgin or the next Nestle or whatever. The reality is that a lot of people start businesses up to make a bit of income in the time that they have available, and they are described somewhat dismissively as lifestyle businesses. For me, that's actually a really important aspect of entrepreneurship and business start. Is people starting a business which fits with their lifestyle. So how do I make money from the time I have available? And we can see a wide range of people, whether they are providing personal services, beauty services, or dog walking, or all sorts of personal things that are offered to people, and through to other people who are doing kind of high level consultancy work as well. So a wide range of activities. We've been able to support many of those through the micro grants, and again through the discretionary grants from the ARG money. And we've been working hard to make sure that, for instance, the local enterprise partnerships plans in terms of the economy take full account of the support that's needed to help people start businesses up. It's a strong theme again that is emerging in terms of our work on economic strategies, the need to provide more support for people in the early stages of businesses. I'm pleased to see that the University of York is developing an institute for entrepreneurship as well, and we're working with them to see how we can make sure that is, as I say, about the ordinary people of York starting businesses up, just as it is about high-flying academics thinking about how they spin out their opportunities as well. There are running your own business is a route for anyone in society, and we need to make sure that the support is there to provide it. There is help available through the Chamber of Commerce, run a project called Adventure, which is about supporting business starts. The Make It Your Business team have been able to provide help on startup to some businesses, but it's the scale. We've talked about over 10,000 people self-employed in York. You need more than a couple of advisors to help those kind of people and that scale of people, and we are a bit restricted at the moment in terms of the amount of support that we have. It's something we're working hard on to increase, to see how we can help. We also know that a lot of accountants, lawyers, and other advisors out there work routinely with people as they start businesses up, and I think if there's one thing we can be certain of, all the survey work shows that businesses that get help at an early stage actually are more likely to succeed, which suggests we should be working as hard as we can to make sure all startup businesses get support, whether that's from public support or whether that's through that network of advisors in the private sector. And that's an important strand that we've tried to build into the Make It York SLA to date, and really hope that we can nail that one as we go forward, is to make sure that we're working with all the providers of business support to make sure that all businesses in York have got access to some kind of help. So that's a kind of a brief run through to support for startup businesses, Andrew.
Okay, thank you for that update. It is quarterly, therefore there'll be another one along soon, and that will provide regular update. It is growing as a collection of data, and I think that's helpful to have everything in one place, and I appreciate the effort that goes into that, because there's a number of different other teams that supply data. As you mentioned, the BID had kindly provided information on data that's collected jointly, and there will be other teams. I think it would be, I would emphasize the importance of collating information on support for startups in the next one. So in terms of the recommendation, what I would do is to add my thanks to officers for their work in the situation to ensure that there is support for business, and for the work of partners in the city, as well as noting the contents of the report. So thank you for that. That concludes item 4, which brings us on to item 5, which is the report on skills. Alison, do you want to kick off on that?
Indeed. Good morning, Councillor Waller. I'm Alison Eadson, the Skills Team Manager at the Council. This report is a regular progress update following the decision taken at your September session to agree the terms of reference for a skills and employment board in the city, and the remit of a task and finish group comprising of predominantly further education, college and university partners, and ourselves at the council, and also the framework for developing the strategy, so a 1-year plan and a 10-year strategy for skills and employment in the city. So it's very much an update around those things and the work that's been happening since. So similarly, we'd like to thank the partners in particular. It is a citywide partnership. We have been working in those last 3 months on those strands. In addition, we've also been working together to actually implement and align provision on the ground. So I'll cover that too. In terms of the Skills and Employment Board, the first meeting took place of the broad board and the membership in terms of reference as agreed on the 17th of December. So after the papers were published, and yourself, you were present at that meeting.
Yes, I was.
In terms of the work for the task and finish group, the predominant focus for that group has been about building the evidence base, which we agreed would be key to underpinning both the 1-year plan and the longer term strategy. The work that's been taking place has been around engaging and building on the work to support businesses. So learning from intelligence that we'd already gathered, particularly in the wake of COVID, around the sector roundtables and the Make It York survey, working with colleagues very closely in the economic team with the work that they're doing, and of course right across the city with the partnerships. We've been looking to build on what we know very much with that skills and employment focus. The University of York have supported that work with student teams, engaging directly with some of the most, I would say, prominent businesses. Now, these are businesses in different sectors who are either large or had quite a contribution to make in the initial phase. So we've had conversations to understand kind of how they've been changing their business, what the immediate needs are, and what support they're looking for in the longer term. That is being supplemented because we want to reach as many businesses of all sizes right across the city. Absolutely. So that's being supplemented with quantitative survey that we're going to send out with the support of both the board members, but also our other channels. So they, including what Simon's mentioned around Chamber of Commerce, Institute of Directors, FSB, and obviously directly through our city's workforce development groups to really understand what those businesses are feeling at the moment. So what we really want to do is reach as many and as broad. So we would also welcome people to, to want to be involved and actually complete that. What we've also been doing is working with the support of the partnership and an independent consultant supported from that partnership to actually understand all of the other intelligence that's out there in the city. So, and I say city, but actually it's regional and national too. So Sector Skills Academy reports, local reports, things from the Local Enterprise Partnership. And again, it's either sector specific, actually in terms of initiatives that are coming on stream, and actually what our businesses, the key pieces, as I've mentioned, what's been happening since COVID and the real up-to-date information, because a lot of the intelligence that we have, quite rightly, is stuff that was produced either before or using data pre-March 2020. In terms of the timeline for production, you'll see that as an appendix to the paper. Following the meeting of both regular meetings of the Task and Finish Group and then the Skills Board, we are working to have the draft of the one-year plan developed by the end of January. And that is for consideration then by yourself, and indeed the scrutiny piece that we want to consider, picking up on what Councillor Douglas said around cross-party involvement.
I'd spoken, I'd discussed with Councillor Rosie Barker as well as Councillor Kilbane in terms of those two scrutiny committees wanting to look at different aspects of the skills agenda, and it was discussed at the skills board meeting that they were, and you heard the discussion there was a very active interest in ensuring there was engagement there with the various councillors on the scrutiny process. So I think that's an important factor, but I think it is important that councillors help to coordinate that so that the time that would be involved by officers of the council as well as visitors from the skills board is effectively utilised and there isn't duplication.
Absolutely. And in terms of the longer term strategy, we're working along similar timelines to our colleagues, and we're looking at end of March for drafting that strategy. But again, as you'll see in the timeline, there are chunks of time identified for consultation aligned with other existing activity through with businesses, with cross-party involvement. Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, it was the ensuring that there's the space for businesses to feed in. I've had a number of different sectors come forward, and you've been involved in those discussions as well, Alison. Certainly, it's been heartening within the construction industry, the interest in developing proposals for long apprenticeships, and therefore it's a good opportunity to engage with businesses, but we're conscious that they have very specific requirements, and simultaneously they're trying to keep their businesses afloat. So it's very much getting information out of them about what they're interested in and feeding back succinctly to them. But I'd pay a tribute to the amount of work that's been done through the sectoral roundtables and a multitude of other discussions, particularly during Business Week, where there was a very strong sharing of information by yourself and the rest of the team.
Thank you. And equally, the recent business leaders session, which again was the date the papers were published, so it's not reflected, but their support and being able to give that overview there was very helpful.
yes, I'm grateful for you coming to that meeting, and I think it helps to transition it from what was an emergency response to the COVID situation to a longer standing framework to enable the voice of business to be heard, and as you've detailed, a quantitative process so that it's a broad understanding of all businesses in the city.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Do you want me to go on to the next piece?
So yes, you've gone to the next bit.
All
Yes.
I was going to mention is the update, not the detail, but the rest of the paper talks about the work on the ground. So where we've been aligning the existing provision and what's emerging from government for both individuals and businesses to support people with their skills development and routes into employment. Also the communication piece, so two key developments were the Skills Hub page on the Make It York website, which is aimed at providing an accessible online resource for businesses looking for predominantly free or heavily funded public support, and indeed support from our partners in terms of upskilling or recruitment. And then also the Let's Be York page, which is aimed at individuals, again, looking for routes into employment or support to develop their skills, perhaps looking to reskill and change direction, or indeed upskill in their existing role. So I think they're really important resources for the city.
Thank you for that, Alison. And I think that is an important feature, recognising the impact that COVID is going to have on young people, many of whom have just recently graduated or are about to graduate or leave school and would find themselves in a very difficult position in terms of getting the experience, making the contacts, and I think it's important to emphasize what work you're doing with that age group, notwithstanding there will be many people in the city who find themselves unemployed and need to retrain at a higher age group, and they are equally important to us to ensure that they are able to find work. So I think what's important with this is drawing together all of the different strands of work that's going on at the same time. It's all very rapid. It's ensuring that the announcements made by ministers about support packages, there's a multitude of those that have been announced, and ensuring that as a facilitator, the council is doing what it can to connect that with businesses so that the maximum use is made of that. And where there are hurdles which have been identified with the apprentice levy, for instance, that we collate that and take that up with the LEP and with government to emphasise that there may be some unintended consequence of policy, but that it is important to ensure that the money that is available to stimulate skills and training and jobs is actually being fully utilised, and getting ourselves into a position for recovery. So thank you very much for that. And we've got the recommendations on page 54. So I appreciate 7.1 and 7.2. I think having the rapid development of a one-year skills plan is important, and there are key decisions that will be made in March in terms of the shape of courses that will be available from the following autumn. And I know that you're very busy collating that information along with the providers, and I think that's a key aspect of the skills board, which we were told there would be a heavy workload in the first quarter to get things going, and it is very much recognizing that in order to develop courses, to recruit people to deliver them, that does have a pipeline for implementation. And I just add my own thanks to yourself and the team for all the work that you've been doing to get this off the ground. It's involved a tremendous adaptation to new ways of working. But as mentioned in Simon's report, there's much stronger relations with partners than had previously been the case, and we need to ensure those are fully utilised. So with the addition of 7.4 to express thanks for all the team's work, happy to agree the recommendations as printed. So thank you for that. That brings us to the end of that item and brings us on to urgent business. I have not been provided with any, so it remains for me as chairing the last meeting before Christmas to wish everyone the best that they can get at this season. So thank you very much, and I'll bring the meeting to a close.